Have you ever wondered what Earth would look like if the oceans decided to reclaim the land? Well, during the Cretaceous period, that's exactly what happened. And trust me, it wasn't just a little coastal flooding we're talking about here. Picture this. You're standing somewhere in the middle of what we now call Kansas. But instead of wheat fields stretching to the horizon, you're looking at ocean water as far as the eye can see. Sounds impossible? It actually happened. The sea levels during the Cretaceous were somewhere between 100 to 250 meters higher than they are today. That's taller than a 70-story building completely submerged beneath the waves. So what caused this massive flooding? The answer lies deep beneath our feet. During this period, volcanic activity was going absolutely crazy. Underwater ridges were spreading apart, pushing up the ocean floor like a slow-motion explosion. When the ocean floor rises, where does all that water go? Up and out, of course, spilling over onto the continents. This created something scientists call epicontinental seas, or inland seas. These weren't just puddles or lakes. We're talking about genuine oceans that cut right through the middle of continents. North America was literally split in two by the Western Interior Seaway, a massive body of water that stretched from the Arctic Ocean all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico. Imagine trying to drive from New York to California and needing a boat for the middle third of your journey. But here's where it gets really interesting. These shallow inland seas created entirely new ecosystems. Unlike the deep ocean, where sunlight barely penetrates past a few hundred meters, these seas were relatively shallow, warm, and absolutely flooded with sunlight. You might think, oh, that sounds pleasant. But pleasant isn't exactly the word I'd use for what lived in these waters. The warm, shallow conditions created a perfect breeding ground for life, but not the kind of life you'd want to encounter on a casual swim. These seas became evolutionary pressure cookers, places where creatures had to adapt quickly or die. And the things that survived? They became some of the most formidable predators our planet has ever seen. Think about what happens when you put a bunch of apex predators in a relatively confined space with limited resources. Competition gets fierce. Evolution accelerates. Only the strongest, fastest, and most cunning survive to pass on their genes. Now multiply that scenario across millions of years, and you begin to understand why the Cretaceous oceans were so hostile. Europe was even more dramatic. It was essentially an archipelago, a scattered collection of islands surrounded by warm, tropical seas. What is now France, Germany, and Italy, mostly underwater. The Mediterranean region that we know today was a very different place, a complex maze of shallow seas and temporary islands that appeared and disappeared as sea levels fluctuated. These changing conditions meant that marine creatures couldn't get comfortable. Ecosystems that existed for thousands of years could be transformed in geological instants. Species had to be flexible, aggressive, and adaptable. Those that couldn't keep up simply vanished into extinction, their fossils now silent testimony to the brutal efficiency of natural selection. So, we have a world that's more water than land, with warm, shallow seas, creating perfect conditions for life to explode in diversity and ferocity. The stage is set, the waters are rising, and into this aquatic arena step some of the most terrifying predators ever to swim the Earth's oceans. What kind of creatures could thrive in such a hostile environment? What adaptations would they need to survive? And more importantly, what would happen if you encountered one of these ancient monsters? That's what we're about to discover. So, what was the apex predator of these Cretaceous oceans? Was it a massive shark, a giant crocodile, something even more terrifying? Let me introduce you to the Mosasaur. And believe me, this creature makes modern great white sharks look like harmless goldfish. Imagine a lizard. Now imagine that lizard decided to abandon life on land entirely and return to the ocean. Then imagine evolution spent millions of years perfecting it into the ultimate marine killing machine. That's essentially what a mosasaur was. These weren't dinosaurs. despite what some movies might suggest. They were marine reptiles, more closely related to modern monitor lizards and snakes than to the T-Rex or Triceratops. But here's the thing that made Mosasaurs absolutely terrifying. They could grow up to 15 meters long. That's roughly the length of a school bus, and every centimeter of that length was designed for one purpose: hunting. Their bodies were streamlined, built for speed and power. They had 4 powerful flippers that could propel them through the water with devastating acceleration. And their tails? Massive, muscular, perfect for rapid bursts of speed when ambushing prey. Now let's talk about their most fearsome feature, the jaw. Remember how I mentioned they were related to snakes? Well, they inherited something absolutely crucial from that lineage. Mosasaurs had double-hinged jaws, similar to what modern snakes possess. This meant they could open their mouths incredibly wide, and more importantly, they could swallow prey that was almost as large as themselves, practically whole. Picture yourself as a fish in the Cretaceous seas. You're swimming along, minding your own business, when suddenly this massive shadow appears above you. Before you can react, a mouth the size of a car opens up, revealing rows upon rows of sharp, backward-curving teeth. These teeth weren't designed to chew. Oh no, they were designed to grip and prevent escape. Once a mosasaur grabbed you, there was no getting away. Those teeth would pierce into your flesh, and the more you struggled, the deeper they'd sink. But it gets worse. Scientists have discovered that Mosasaurs had an additional set of teeth on the roof of their mouths, on their pterygoid bones. These extra teeth helped push prey backward down their throat as they swallowed. It was a one-way journey into the belly of the beast, and there was absolutely nothing you could do about it. What did these monsters eat? Everything. Fossilized stomach contents have revealed fish, sharks, sea turtles, other marine reptiles, and even other mosasaurs. Yes, they were cannibalistic when the opportunity arose. Some specimens have been found with bite marks from other mosasaurs, evidence of territorial battles or feeding frenzies that must have turned the water red with blood. One of the largest species, Mosasaurus hoffmanni, ruled the oceans during the final years of the Cretaceous period. This beast could exceed 17 meters in length and weigh up to 15 tons. To put that in perspective, that's heavier than 3 adult elephants combined. And unlike elephants, this thing could swim at speeds that would make an Olympic swimmer look stationary. Scientists have found evidence that mosasaurs weren't just ambush predators. They were intelligent hunters, capable of sophisticated hunting strategies. Some fossil sites show evidence of pack hunting behavior, where multiple mosasaurs would coordinate to take down prey much larger than themselves. Imagine being chased by a group of these monsters, working together like aquatic wolves, cutting off your escape routes, driving you into shallower water where you'd be even more vulnerable. Their eyes were positioned to give them excellent binocular vision, meaning they could judge distances with deadly accuracy. They could spot prey from far away in those clear Cretaceous waters and plan their attack accordingly. And their sense of smell? Likely exceptional, allowing them to detect blood or injured animals from kilometers away. Here's something that should send chills down your spine. Mosasaurs had to breathe air, just like whales do today. But unlike the relatively peaceful whale surfacing we see today, imagine a 15-meter predator bursting through the surface, water cascading off its massive body, taking a breath before plunging back into the depths to continue its hunt. Some scientists believe they might have even hunted pterosaurs and early birds that ventured too close to the water's surface. The reign of the mosasaur lasted for about 27 million years. That's an incredibly successful run for any predator. They dominated every ocean, from the tropics to the poles, adapting to different environments and prey. They were evolution's answer to the question, what happens when you give a reptile complete mastery of the marine environment? But they weren't alone in these hostile waters. Oh no, the mosasaurs had plenty of competition and company. Now you might be thinking, okay, so the mosasaurs owned the oceans. At least I'd be safe if I could fly, right? Wrong. Dead wrong. Because the Cretaceous period didn't just have ocean monsters. It had aerial nightmares patrolling the skies above those waters and sleek, fast-swimming predators cutting through the depths below. Let me paint you a picture of just how thoroughly hostile these ecosystems were. Let's start with the Pterosaurs. These weren't birds, and they definitely weren't dinosaurs. They were flying reptiles, and some of them had evolved into specialized fishing machines that would make modern pelicans look pathetic by comparison. Ever heard of Pteranodon? This creature had a wingspan that could reach up to 7 meters. That's wider than a giraffe is tall. Imagine something that massive soaring over the Cretaceous seas, its shadow darkening the water below. But here's what made pterosaurs so effective as marine hunters. They had virtually no competition for their ecological niche. While dinosaurs dominated the land and mosasaurs ruled the seas, pterosaurs had the skies all to themselves. They could spot schools of fish from hundreds of meters in the air, then dive down with incredible precision to snatch their prey right from the surface. Some species, like Pteranodon, had long, toothless beaks perfect for scooping up fish. Others, like Ornithocheirus, had mouths bristling with sharp teeth, ideal for gripping slippery prey. And then there was Quetzalcoatlus, one of the largest flying animals ever to exist, with a wingspan up to 11 meters. While it likely wasn't a dedicated fish eater, can you imagine being a small marine creature and seeing that shadow pass overhead? Absolutely terrifying. But the pterosaurs weren't the only ones hunting from above. Early birds had begun to evolve, and some of them were already exploring oceanic lifestyles. Hesperornis, for example, was a toothed diving bird that looked like a nightmarish penguin. It had lost the ability to fly but had become an incredibly efficient underwater hunter, using its powerful legs to pursue fish in the depths. Now, let's dive beneath the surface and talk about the ichthyosaurs. The name means fish lizard, but that doesn't even begin to capture how remarkable these creatures were. Imagine taking a dolphin, giving it reptilian features, massive eyes, and teeth like daggers, and you're getting close to what an ichthyosaur looked like. These marine reptiles had been around since the Triassic period, long before the Cretaceous, and they had spent over 150 million years perfecting the art of ocean hunting. They were built for speed. Their bodies were completely streamlined, with a dorsal fin for stability, a powerful tail for propulsion, and flippers for steering. Some species could probably swim at speeds exceeding 40 kilometers per hour. That's faster than most humans can run on land. But what really set ichthyosaurs apart were their eyes. Some species had the largest eyes of any vertebrate ever discovered, up to 30 centimeters in diameter. That's roughly the size of a dinner plate. Why would they need eyes that enormous? Because they were hunting in the deep ocean, in conditions where light barely penetrated. Those massive eyes could gather every available photon, allowing them to see prey that would be invisible to other predators. Species like Ophthalmosaurus could dive to depths of 600 meters or more, holding their breath for extended periods while hunting squid and fish in the darkness. Imagine the pressure at those depths, the cold, the absolute darkness. And in that environment, you'd suddenly see a pair of massive eyes reflecting what little light exists, followed by jaws bristling with sharp teeth. That's the last thing countless Cretaceous sea creatures ever saw. Ichthyosaurs gave birth to live young, just like modern whales and dolphins. We know this because we've found fossils of pregnant females with babies still inside them, and even fossils that captured the moment of birth. This meant they never needed to return to land, making them perfectly adapted to their oceanic lifestyle. But they weren't invincible. Fossil evidence shows bite marks from mosasaurs on ichthyosaur bones. These two groups of predators competed for the same prey, and sometimes they competed with each other. An injured ichthyosaur would have been easy prey for a large mosasaur, and vice versa. The ocean was a battlefield where even the apex predators weren't truly safe. And let's not forget about the Plesiosaurs, another group of marine reptiles that coexisted with ichthyosaurs and Mosasaurs. These creatures looked bizarre, with long necks, small heads, and 4 large flippers. Species like Elasmosaurus had necks that could be up to 7 meters long, containing more than 70 vertebrae. They'd swim through schools of fish, their necks darting like snakes to snatch prey with surprising speed. So picture this complete ecosystem. Pterosaurs circling overhead, ready to dive at any moment. Ichthyosaurs hunting in the depths, their massive eyes scanning for movement. Plesiosaurs using their long necks to reach into crevices and schools of fish. And lurking nearby, always the Mosasaurs, waiting for an opportunity to strike at anything that showed weakness. There was no safe zone in the Cretaceous oceans. The surface, patrolled by pterosaurs. The mid-depths, full of hunting ichthyosaurs and plesiosaurs. The deeper waters, that's where things got even stranger and even more dangerous. You know what's really fascinating about the Cretaceous oceans? We tend to focus on the big flashy predators like mosasaurs and ichthyosaurs. But some of the most intense battles happening in those ancient seas involved creatures that most people have never even heard of. Let me take you into the shadowy depths where cephalopods ruled and where survival meant engaging in combat that would make modern ocean warfare look tame. Let's talk about ammonites. Now, if you've ever seen a nautilus, you've got a rough idea of what these creatures looked like. They were mollusks with beautiful spiral shells related to modern squids and octopuses. But here's where it gets interesting. While your average nautilus today might be 20 centimeters across, Cretaceous ammonites could grow absolutely enormous. We're talking specimens of Parapozosia sepenredensis that exceeded 2 meters in diameter. That's taller than most adult humans. Imagine encountering one of these giants in the murky Cretaceous waters. Their shells weren't just for show. Those intricate spirals were incredibly strong, providing protection against predators while maintaining neutral buoyancy that allowed them to hover effortlessly in the water column. Inside that shell lived a creature with tentacles, a sharp beak, and eyes that could track movement in low-light conditions. But here's the thing that makes ammonite fossils so compelling. Many of them bear the scars of battle. We've found countless specimens with bite marks, crushed shells, and healed injuries that tell stories of narrow escapes and violent encounters. Some shells show tooth marks that perfectly match the jaws of mosasaurs. Others have damage consistent with attacks from large sharks or other marine reptiles. Think about what that means. These weren't peaceful herbivores drifting through calm waters. These were creatures constantly under threat, constantly fighting for survival. And they fought back. Ammonites had sharp beaks capable of crushing through shell and bone. Their tentacles, while not as long or flexible as modern squids, could still grapple with predators and prey alike. Now, let's venture deeper into the food chain and talk about the predators that hunted ammonites, the belemnites and their cousins, the ancient squids. If ammonites were the armored tanks of the Cretaceous cephalopod world, belemnites were the stealth fighters. They looked similar to modern squids, but with an internal shell called a rostrum that gave them rigid structure and likely helped with buoyancy control. These creatures could grow to impressive sizes, with some species reaching 3 meters in length. Unlike their shelled cousins, belemnites were built for speed and aggression. They had 10 arms lined with hooks and suckers, large eyes for hunting in dim conditions, and that characteristic squid ability to jet backward at high speeds using water propulsion. The fossil record shows us something absolutely remarkable, evidence of epic battles between these cephalopods and the marine reptiles that hunted them. We've found mosasaur fossils with belemnite hooks still embedded in their skulls and jaws. Imagine the scene. A massive mosasaur attacks what it thinks is easy prey, only to have a 3-meter squid latch onto its face with arms covered in hooks, refusing to let go even as the reptile thrashes violently. And here's something that should blow your mind. We've discovered fossilized ink sacs from these ancient cephalopods. That's right. Just like modern squids and octopuses, these Cretaceous creatures could release clouds of ink to confuse predators and cover their escape. Scientists have even reconstituted some of this 150-million-year-old ink and used it to draw pictures. The defensive strategies these animals employed back then are still used by their descendants today. But the really intense battles happened between cephalopods themselves. Larger belemnites hunted smaller ammonites, cracking their shells with powerful beaks. Some ammonite species developed incredibly thick shells or elaborate spines as defense mechanisms. It was an evolutionary arms race playing out over millions of years. Prehistoric sharks added another layer of danger to this underwater battleground. Species like Cretaceous mantelli, sometimes called the Ginsu shark because of its incredibly sharp teeth, grew up to 8 meters long and hunted everything from fish to marine reptiles. Fossil evidence shows they weren't picky eaters. We've found ammonite shells with semicircular bite marks that perfectly match Cretaceous jaws. Then there was Squalocorax, a smaller but incredibly common shark that fed on pretty much anything it could catch. These sharks have been called the crows of the Cretaceous seas because they seemed to fill a scavenger role, showing up wherever there was death and blood in the water. But they were also active predators, hunting in the zones where ammonites and belemnites congregated. What made these deep water battles so brutal was the environment itself. In the murky depths, visibility was limited. Creatures relied on other senses, detecting vibrations in the water, tracking chemical signals, using what little light penetrated from above. It was a world of ambush and counter-ambush, where predator could become prey in an instant. Some ammonites evolved transparent shells, trying to blend into the water column. Others developed elaborate spines and ridges that made them harder to swallow. The evolutionary pressure was relentless. Any advantage, no matter how small, could mean the difference between passing on your genes and becoming someone else's dinner. And all of this was happening in waters that were about to become even more hostile. Because the physical environment of the Cretaceous oceans wasn't just challenging, it was in many ways lethal. So we've talked about the monsters that filled the Cretaceous oceans. But here's something that might surprise you. The creatures themselves weren't even the most hostile aspect of these ancient seas. The environment itself was trying to kill everything in it. Let me explain why even the most powerful predators were constantly fighting against the ocean itself just to survive. Let's start with the temperature. When I say the Cretaceous oceans were warm, I don't mean pleasantly tropical like a Caribbean vacation. I mean lethally hot. In equatorial regions, surface water temperatures regularly exceeded 35 degrees Celsius. Some estimates push that even higher, to 37 or 38 degrees. That's approaching the temperature of a hot tub, and remember, this was the ocean, not a spa. Why does this matter? Because warm water holds less dissolved oxygen than cold water. It's basic chemistry. As temperatures rise, the ability of water to hold oxygen decreases dramatically. This created a massive problem for every air-breathing and gill-breathing creature in these oceans. They were essentially suffocating in slow motion, forced to work harder just to extract enough oxygen to survive. This led to the development of what scientists call oxygen minimum zones, or OMZs. These were layers of water, sometimes hundreds of meters thick, where oxygen levels dropped so low that most complex life simply couldn't exist. Fish, marine reptiles, ammonites, everything had to either avoid these zones entirely or develop special adaptations to survive brief passages through them. And it gets worse. In many areas, particularly in those shallow inland seas we talked about earlier, The lack of oxygen created perfect conditions for sulfur-producing bacteria. These microorganisms thrived in low-oxygen environments, releasing hydrogen sulfide as a byproduct of their metabolism. You know what hydrogen sulfide smells like? Rotten eggs. You know what it does to complex organisms? It poisons them. We have geological evidence of massive dead zones in Cretaceous oceans where the water was literally toxic. The seafloor in these areas is marked by black shale deposits, rich in organic matter that never decomposed because there wasn't enough oxygen to support the bacteria that normally break down dead organisms. Any creature that swam too deep into these zones would have been quickly overcome by toxic gas and lack of oxygen. Imagine being a mosasaur hunting prey, pursuing it into deeper water, and suddenly hitting this invisible barrier of poison. Your lungs burning, your muscles screaming for oxygen that isn't there, toxic gas seeping into your bloodstream. Even the apex predators had to respect these deadly zones. But the oceans found even more ways to be hostile. Volcanic activity during the Cretaceous was intense, and much of it occurred underwater. Submarine volcanoes released massive quantities of carbon dioxide, sulfur dioxide, and heavy metals directly into the ocean. This caused ocean acidification on a scale that makes modern climate change look mild by comparison. Acidic water dissolves calcium carbonate. You know what's made of calcium carbonate? Shells. The shells of ammonites, the shells of countless mollusks, the protective armor of marine creatures throughout the food chain. These organisms had to constantly rebuild their shells faster than the acidic water could dissolve them. It was an exhausting, never-ending battle against the chemistry of the ocean itself. The acidification also changed the color of the seas. In some regions, the water would have appeared green or even reddish-brown due to the concentration of metals and minerals. These weren't the crystal-clear blue waters you see in nature documentaries. These were murky, chemically unstable environments where the rules of survival changed constantly. All of this created intense evolutionary pressure. Creatures had to adapt rapidly or die. We see evidence of this in the fossil record. Explosions of new species, bizarre body plans that appeared and disappeared within a few million years, evolutionary experiments that nature was running in real time. Some fish developed more efficient gills to extract oxygen from depleted water. Marine reptiles evolved larger lungs and more efficient oxygen storage in their blood. Many creatures became nocturnal hunters, avoiding the hottest, most oxygen-depleted surface waters during the day. The Cretaceous oceans were essentially a massive laboratory where evolution was testing every possible solution to an increasingly hostile environment. And then, 66 million years ago, everything changed in an instant. An asteroid roughly 10 kilometers in diameter slammed into what is now the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. The impact released energy equivalent to billions of nuclear bombs. The immediate effects were catastrophic. The asteroid hit in shallow tropical waters, instantly vaporizing trillions of tons of seawater and limestone bedrock. The impact generated tsunamis that make anything in recorded history look like ripples in a bathtub. We're talking waves potentially 1,500 meters high, walls of water that scoured entire coastlines clean of life. These mega-tsunamis traveled across ocean basins, devastating marine ecosystems thousands of kilometers from the impact site. But the waves were just the beginning. The impact threw so much debris into the atmosphere that it blocked out the sun for months, possibly years. Without sunlight, photosynthesis stopped. Phytoplankton, the foundation of the marine food web, died en masse. When the phytoplankton died, the zooplankton that fed on them died. Then the fish that ate zooplankton died. Then the predators that ate those fish died. The ocean's food web collapsed from the bottom up. Even the mighty Mosasaurs, the terror of the Cretaceous seas, couldn't survive when there was simply nothing left to eat. 75% of all species on Earth went extinct. The oceans, already hostile, became a graveyard. But here's the remarkable thing. life survived. It always does. The creatures that made it through that catastrophe became the ancestors of everything we see in modern oceans. Every whale, every shark, every fish swimming today descended from the few survivors of that apocalyptic event. The Cretaceous oceans were more hostile than anything we can imagine today. And yet, they were also a crucible of evolution, a testing ground that shaped the future of all marine life. Perhaps that's the most important lesson. Life doesn't need perfect conditions. It just needs a chance. If you found this journey through the Cretaceous oceans as fascinating as we did, don't let the story end here. Subscribe to dive deeper into Earth's most incredible prehistoric mysteries. There's so much more to explore, from the bizarre creatures that walked alongside dinosaurs to the cataclysmic events that shaped our planet. Hit that subscribe button and join us as we continue uncovering the secrets of our ancient world. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next.